Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hospitality Today Live. I'm Deborah Gardner, your host. And do we have a lot to share with you today? Lots of things going on, and especially our wonderful guest today, who happens to be Courtney Stanley. And Courtney specializes in teaching people how to lead with empathy, use their voice to win, and transform adversity into opportunity, even in a global pandemic. And she's going to share with us several things today, but mostly it's about her challenge that she has come up against within her career journey. And also, how can people combat imposter syndrome? Oh, we definitely have to talk to her about this today because there is a lot of that going on, and she is the expert that's going to share it with us today. So please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back because you will be happy you did. Hang on there. Welcome, everyone. We are here with the episode sponsored by Visibly Media, helping business communicate strategically in print and online, visiblymedia.com. So we are here with our special guest, which we wanted to get to right away. Courtney, hello.
Hi, Deborah. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm very, very well. It's been a long weekend, and we are so happy that you were able to join us, especially at the last minute, because Carrie, our friend Abernetty, wasn't able to be here because of strep throat. So thank you so much for on behalf of HTL and all the viewers for you to be here today. I know a lot of people will have some questions for you and comments to share because this is a hot topic. But before we get to what we really want to talk about, I am just so impressed, completely impressed with you. You have so many things going on in the industry, and yet so many awards and committees that you belong to. Let me just ramble some of these off so our viewers can know a little bit about you. You're on the MPI Women Advisory Board. You're on the board of directors for Association for Women in Events. You're the ambassador for Meetings Mean Business. And just this morning, I heard that you are a finalist for the 2021 Eddie and Ozzy Award for your podcast, Dare to Interrupt. Is that right? Am I saying this right?
Dare to Interrupt. And I actually had no idea, so that's exciting.
Yes, a little really bird told me about that. So congratulations. That is so cool. So tell us a little bit about your background, because I do know, being in Michigan, you studied event management at Central Michigan University. So tell us all about your background and how you got where you are now.
Absolutely. So I went to Central Michigan University. I studied hospitality, I studied event management, and I also minored in leadership studies. I knew that I wanted to get into this industry for the reason of there being so much flexibility. I could see that there was a lot of opportunity to try different things in different sectors of the industry and travel and meet new people, and all of that felt very exciting to me. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career. So it was a perfect place for me to jump in and just start to play a little bit and see what I liked and what I didn't like. So the first couple years of my career, I started out as actually an intern, a special events intern at the Country Music Association in Nashville. I transitioned into my first big girl job at an events agency in Boston, worked there for a few years. Then I jumped up to our great white north neighbor in Toronto, Canada, and worked for an event technology company doing event marketing strategy and PR. And then most recently, I actually stepped into the world of politics for about 3 years and worked for an environmental political nonprofit, doing a lot of fundraising strategy and event strategy for them as well. And all of that leads up to the big jump that I made as a full-time entrepreneur at the very beginning of 2020. And I'm a full-time speaker. I am an event MC, podcaster, career coach. Basically ended up turning all of those side hustles from about 8 years of work into my full-time position now, running my own business. And it's been an interesting first year and a half. I will tell you that, Deborah.
Well, we definitely are so impressed again with you and what you have accomplished in such a short period of time. But what great opportunity, right? When we see something like this, because as we know in our industry, this is not our first rodeo. We've been through these things before, but this one definitely was a beast. But that didn't stop you. And so we are so grateful to have someone like you in the industry where a lot of people left. But you came in here and bulldozed right on through, and look at you today. This is just so exciting. So, and what a great background to really get your feet wet and go all different areas. And that's kind of what we are. We're like a cross trainer in this industry because you get to dab into so many different areas, and that's what makes it exciting. And look, that's exactly what you have done. So although you have been through where you are today and very, very successful, share with some of us what are some of the most challenging parts of your career journey?
That's such a good question, Deborah. And I feel like it's such a loaded one too, because of course, we face challenges in any position, in any opportunity or experience that we're in. For me personally, I am just the type of person that will try her best to give 100. So going into any company, I always wanted to be, the achiever, the overachiever. But I will share with you that in the first two companies that I worked for, I was let go. So the first company was more of just kind of a restructure financial thing. Still not a great feeling, especially again for somebody who just always wants to overachieve and wants to prove herself and make sure that she is a valuable asset to a team. The second company that I worked for was not as pretty of an exit. And I found myself getting let go from that company after a couple years of working there. And that one was really tough. That one was just an experience where I actually really loved the work that I did. I loved the people that I was surrounded by every day. And so those two experiences, I think probably were, especially because they were back-to-back experiences, took a toll on my confidence and on my self-worth. And even though I was super engaged in the industry, volunteering on international boards and maybe, winning an award or being recognized here or there for the work that I was doing on the side, I felt like I was kind of at this weird fork in the road where I have this industry brand where I'm this overachiever, successful, engaged member of our community, but then behind closed doors working for these other companies, I just lost my job twice. So I think that probably was one of the most difficult times, that second time that I got let go. And it took a lot of work to be able to really redefine my value and rediscover who I was and what I brought to the table and who I was in the industry too, and making sure that I felt like I was being my most authentic, aligned self. So I would say those were probably a couple of the bigger obstacles that I have faced so far in my career. And then, of course, second to that, the pandemic. Obviously starting a business, going from side hustling to full time as an entrepreneur, January 2020 was the worst and the best timing. I think it was really, really difficult in a lot of ways that are very obvious to our industry. But it also provided me an opportunity to really push myself and to get back to why I was doing the work, even, with everything kind of falling apart around us, and why I really wanted to push forward and continue this path of being an entrepreneur.
Wow. And, I totally can sympathize with the being fired part as opposed to being laid off or furloughed, like majority of people during this pandemic. If people think that was devastating, try being fired, because I can totally sympathize with you on that, because when I was 20, my very first hotel job, I was fired. And but at the same time, 30 years later, I'm still in the industry. So it really told me, hey, I did belong in this. And it was tough. It was really devastating for a 20-year-old to, go running to mommy and daddy and saying, hey, I just got fired and I don't know why, and all this. It was devastating, and nobody else was getting fired around me. It's like, what did I do wrong? What happened? And looking back, it was probably one of the best lessons. There were so many lessons, silver linings that came out of it. But I can totally understand what you went through, and it's for a reason. That's the best way to look at it. And just to learn whatever those silver linings were from it, and move forward, and just know that that wasn't where you were supposed to be at that time. And what better way to push you forward than to get fired.
It's so true, though. It's sometimes in those moments where you get so, fired up, or you experience, maybe a little bit more pain in those moments, that sometimes push you to do things a little bit more than you would have in the past. Right. So, would I have gone to the next job that I did if I hadn't felt fired up about XYZ? Maybe not. But then the other thing that you said, Deborah, that I really thought was interesting is, that people, when you got let go, when you got fired, you looked around and nobody else had gotten fired. And that's so often our perception and our experience. Sure. But the reality is, people just don't talk about it because we feel embarrassed, and we feel ashamed because we feel like we failed. But the reality is, especially now for our industry, that so many people are out of work for one reason or another, whether they got furloughed, they got laid off, they got fired. And so I try to, as much as possible, help people understand that it's normal to lose your job, that at some point in your career, it doesn't matter how successful you are, there may be things that happen where you end up in a position where you might feel embarrassed about not being in a place of work or whatever that might be. So I try to help normalize that, because there is such a stigma around being out of work, and most people at some point will go through that. So you're not alone. If you're right now, you're not alone, my friend.
Right. Even though you might feel it, it still happens, definitely. Yes. And as much as our industry, everybody moves around, it can happen even more in our industry compared to many other industries. But it's just a matter of just accepting the fact that, hey, this is not where I'm supposed to be. Yes. I'm supposed to be somewhere else bigger and better. That's kind of the way to take a look at it. But this is a great segue, because we want to talk about imposter syndrome and how people can combat that. I know imposter syndrome sometimes can be, to define it can be confusing. And all I know from the Harvard Business Review is that it's about doubling your abilities and feeling like a fraud, which is pretty devastating in itself to hear that. But can you share with us, what is it? I mean, is it part of mental illness? What causes it? Is there something that we should be aware of, like depression? How does this all work? You're the expert. Share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Deborah. And I am no mental health expert, so I'm not going to pretend to be, but I would say that imposter syndrome is pretty darn common. And it is the definition that you described, basically being fully qualified, but doubting yourself to the point where you feel like a fraud. That is how I would frame imposter syndrome as well. And it's so interesting, because there has been research done where they find that a lot of the higher performers, the higher achievers, are the ones that report suffering from imposter syndrome, or feeling like a fraud, or showing up into a boardroom and feeling like you don't belong, even though you're perfectly qualified to be there. And a lot of times it can stem from comparison. And we know that that is such an issue in our lives today, in our society today, where, things like social media, we're experiencing, and we're looking to our left and to our right, and we feel like we're not good enough, or we feel like we don't belong, or that, we have to do XYZ before we actually fit into a certain crowd. And of course, yes, we should be growing. We should be exploring what makes us credible in our field, or whatever that may be. But imposter syndrome is when you are fully qualified, you are fully credible, yet you feel like you actually don't belong in that room full of people. A lot of people struggle with feeling like they don't belong. And I do, one-on-one coaching work with high performing people, specifically women. And a lot of those women come to me because they know that I will talk about this type of experience and this topic, and that there are I believe, certain strategies that you can practice routinely to help you build that confidence and to feel like you actually do belong in the seat that you earned around that table.
Wow. Yeah. That is amazing, because it's such a loaded topic and problem that I think everyone eventually experiences. So would it even feel like if you're feeling like you're unsure, is that considered imposter syndrome as well? Like if you're just unsure, is that part of it too?
It can be. It absolutely can be. So I'll give you an example from my own
Yes.
personal experience. So I was the youngest person to ever sit on Meeting Professionals International Board of Directors. And I went through the same application process as everyone else. I went through the same interview process as everyone else. And I earned the seat at that table. But because, regardless of my qualifications and that I had competed at the same level as everybody else who was there, because I was younger and felt less experienced in certain areas, or felt like I maybe couldn't contribute at the same level as some of the more senior experienced people in the room, it made me feel insecure about what value I really brought to the table. And it took actually support from another woman on the board who just kind of mentored me and pulled me aside. And she noticed that, this vivacious person who was hungry to be there that came in the room was all of a sudden quiet and wasn't really raising her hand and wasn't really asking questions or challenging other perspectives. She pulled me aside and she said, there are already not enough women around this table, so we need your voice. And whatever you need to do to find that voice, I need you to do that because we need you here. And it took that encouragement to almost remind me of the value that I did bring to the table and remind me that I actually did belong in that room. And even if I didn't have the same experiences, I had valuable experiences to offer that group of people. So it is a feeling of uncertainty and feeling unsure of your value, but it's really that scenario where you actually are fully qualified to be there and you've earned that place, but for some reason you feel like a fraud, like you don't belong. Maybe they made a mistake bringing you in, and you tend to end up holding yourself back and not offering your best because you don't remember that you have a lot to give.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a great example, and a real life example that you personally went through. But, kudos to MPI that they're just such a great organization that recognizes something like that. And to have you on in that position with them is such an added asset and such a value that you do bring to the table. But yeah, that does happen. Sometimes people think, oh gosh, I'm way over my head. Now that I'm in this position, it's like, oh no, what did I do? Sometimes I do that even today. But okay, so that makes an interesting point, because there's a lot of times we're unsure, and if that's part of imposter syndrome, we need to tackle that. But we do have some of your fans here with some comments. We have one from Lisa Raymond. Do either credentials or education or lack thereof play a part in actually creating the imposter syndrome situation?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Lisa, and absolutely. So some of the clients that I do work with one-on-one to help them build their confidence and combat imposter syndrome will say that they feel like they're not good enough, or that they don't belong because they don't have a formal degree, or that they don't have the right credentials or education. And so they feel like that puts them on a lower level than the other people in the room, when in fact, they did earn that spot and they're sitting at the same level as everybody else, regardless of their credentials or their educational background. But some people feel like they really do need that. And that's okay. Do the things that make you feel the most confident so that you allow yourself to bring your best ideas and thoughts and perspectives to the table. But a lot of times, and I've again heard this from so many of my clients, that is something that they feel like they lack, and therefore they are not as good as the other people who maybe have those credentials in the room.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely is something internally that somebody that they know, but maybe somebody else doesn't know, but they know, and just knowing can trigger that imposter syndrome for anyone. And I think that's where it starts. It starts within you, not feeling that confident level, no matter if you have education or not. Yeah, very good advice there that it definitely takes somebody to want to overcome those in order to move forward. And again, it's just something that I think a lot of people end up tackling, no doubt. And now we got Visibly Media that wants to ask, can someone draw a comparison in a constructive way and avoid it? So in other words, how do you get rid of it?
Yeah. Great question, and an important question for sure, Deborah. So I will, these are exercises that I have done with myself just based on my own need to rebuild my confidence, especially after facing professional rejection, like getting fired, getting let go, that kind of thing. So what I typically encourage people to do to help them start to look imposter syndrome in the face and call imposter syndrome the fraud that it actually is to start by looking at or making a list of your objective value. So what is your educational background? What professional experience do you have? What personal experience do you have? What have you been recognized for? What do people say about you that is really positive and fantastic? So start to actually make a list of those objective black and white truths, that feedback that is written in stone that says that you are actually the qualified person that was hired to do the job or that was chosen to sit in that seat. That's the first thing that I encourage people to do. The second is to look for a little bit more of that qualitative data or that qualitative feedback. So go out to, 3 trusted people in your network, choose a family member or friend, choose an industry peer, and choose somebody that has actually worked with you in a professional setting, and ask those 3 people that are touching your life in 3 different ways. Ask them, what is my greatest strength? And then ask them, what is one way in which you see me holding myself back? And what's really helpful about getting this feedback from people who trust you and you trust and people who love you and admire you is that they're going to remind you of the value that you bring to the table and what makes you really special and unique. But they're also going to help you to become a little bit more self-aware about areas where maybe you are actually holding yourself back. And maybe imposter syndrome is one of those barriers that gets in your way of really bringing your best to the table. Those are a couple things that I suggest that people do. And then in addition to that, I love a good StrengthsFinder test. I love a good personality test. I think the best gift that you can ever give to yourself is knowing yourself better. So take a StrengthsFinder test, let an assessment tell you what your top 5 strengths are so that, again, it feels like a more objective way of reiterating and redefining your value and who you are and the skills that you have. But then also do a fun personality test like an Enneagram and get to know yourself better, where you're understanding what your core fears are, what your core motivators are, your core desires are. That way you're able to show up in a way that feels authentic to you, but you also know yourself. And you have to know yourself in order to actually show up as yourself and allow the world to really see you for who you are.
Oh, that is such great advice. And I think it all comes down to self-talk.
Yes.
Look in the mirror and say, hey, I am good enough. I do know what I'm doing. I belong here. And I think you have to say it out loud, right? I mean, it's just easier that way.
Yes, I think so too. And that inner critic, I think, is probably a lot of times our worst enemy. We are typically our own worst critic. We see things that nobody else around us actually sees, and we highlight them and we tell ourselves oftentimes a story that's not actually true. So I'm with you, Deborah. I think actually writing down those power statements and reading them aloud, I do this every morning. I write down 3 things that maybe I'm feeling a little bit insecure about, and I write them in a way that feels powerful. And I just say them to myself in the morning to remind myself that I am more and probably different than what my inner critic is telling me.
Yeah. So all our viewers out there that are watching right now, listen to what Courtney is saying here, because I think that is a great idea to start your day out with. Talking to yourself, writing it down, posting it on your refrigerator, whatever it's going to take so that you can visually see it, you can visually talk about it. And that way it starts, building inside of you on a positive note than to walk outside your house with, feeling like, okay, this is going to be another drabby day kind of thing. I think that's a great exercise. I think that is brilliant. And how easy.
Yeah, easy, tangible, part of your morning routine kind of thing. Anybody can do it. And I find it to be helpful and just a positive way to start your day.
Yeah. And sometimes to help also, I'll sometimes send myself a text.
Ooh, I love that.
Whether it's a quote from I saw on Facebook or something, or I'll send a text, I love you.
I love that. That's awesome, Deborah. I'm going to send
and that way it pops up and I'm reading what I wrote to myself.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
Sometimes that works. So other than, getting it from somebody else would be wonderful, but it's okay to, send a private note to yourself. So that way you can actually end up, talking to yourself in a different way, I believe. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we have another comment here from Visibly Media that says, it seems there's a lot of immediately, I think it says relevancy, I think, these days.
Yeah.
Do you feel empathy is wearing, and how do we rebuild it? Oh, okay.
So let's talk about empathy. Yeah. No, I don't think that empathy is waning. I would say quite the opposite, actually. I think that's been one of the gifts that has come out of the pandemic is we've been operating in this time where all of a sudden we've become more human than we ever have before, especially in professional settings with kids running around or having to take care of, loved ones who maybe have fallen ill, or, mental health has become such a big conversation, more so during the pandemic because there's been such an uptick in depression and in people's needs to really take care of their mental wellness and their mental health. So I think what I've seen is that companies and leadership specifically have really started to prioritize making sure that they're listening to their people and that they're practicing empathetic leadership in their team settings and in their workplaces, because we're also sitting in a time where a lot of people are changing careers due to one reason or another. So in order to really make sure that you're showing compassion to your team and you're showing that you care for their needs and that you are practicing empathy in that leadership role, that's going to help you retain people more so than if you were to just kind of, maybe go back to let's focus on the bottom line and forget that your employees are actually the biggest contributor to that bottom line.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely. Wow. This is great information and a much needed information, especially now. So Courtney, totally appreciate that. I do have one other question for you. And being fairly new to the hospitality industry, but so diving in there and doing all these wonderful entrepreneurial things. What is the nicest part about working in the hospitality industry to you?
Oh my gosh, that's such an easy question.
Oh,
it's
good.
the people. It's the people. I love the people. Even though I've been in our industry for a decade now, I've stepped out a little bit, especially when I worked in more of the political realm. And I never disconnected from our community because I truly do feel like we operate like a family, in this last year and a half that's been extraordinarily difficult for so many people. I have been so incredibly grateful for the support that our community provides and the way that people actually really truly do show up when maybe you do need a little bit more encouragement or you need a referral or whatever it is to keep your business afloat or to, make sure that you're maintaining a level of joy that you really want to maintain. So I would say hands down, best part of our industry are the people. We make this place incredible.
That's wonderful. That's good to hear. Yeah, it's a running tab in that area, because without the people, I don't know what this industry would do. And because of the strength of the people, this industry is definitely going to survive as well, especially this major pandemic that we went through. But it's people like you as well. Bringing in such fresh blood and ideas and brilliancy to the table. We can't thank you enough for choosing the hospitality industry. You're perfect for it. There's no doubt about it. And I'm so impressed with you as far as, what you have accomplished, including your Dare to Interrupt podcast. Can't wait to watch that. I hope our viewers do as well, because it's a rocking with that award. My gosh, it's got definitely be rocking. And I know people are going to want to stay in touch with you as well and connect with you. And I know that showing your your email and your website here is good. Is there any other way that people can connect with you?
Yeah, I would say outside of email and website, you can find me on pretty much any social media channel at Courtney on Stage. That's my handle for Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm also a huge LinkedIn lover, so you can just search my name, Courtney Stanley, and please connect with me. I'd love to see everybody's faces who are tuning in today.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much again for all your brilliancy and your beauty for being here with us on the show, especially at the last minute like this. We could have talked another hour, but certainly want to stay in touch even more so. And gosh, thank you so much for being here with us. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. I'm really grateful to be here.
You bet. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Whoops.
Always squeeze and hold.
Yeah, I think Courtney was going to take over the show here. she could do that. Definitely, she could do that. Well, there you go, everyone. I hope that you really enjoyed her. I know I did. She definitely has a lot going on. You'll want to follow her and you'll want to stay in touch with her because you just don't know what she's going to do next. And if she does, it's going to be exciting. So I know I'm going to, and I hope you do too. And if you enjoyed this conversation, by all means, know that the replay will be available on all our social media platforms. Please share it with others, especially for that topic of imposter syndrome, which we definitely need to keep a close eye on. And we also want to thank our sponsor for today's show, Visibly Media, for being on hand. And if you have any questions or comments or know anyone else that would like to be on the show, by all means, just go ahead and email us at hello@hospitalitytodaylive. Now, we do want to make one special announcement that a couple of special announcements, as I promised earlier today. This week happens to be our 1-year anniversary here at HTL. Can't believe it's been a year. And so we want to thank all our fans and other viewers that have been here or want to be here, even starting today, for being here. Oh my gosh, we're so excited that we actually did this for a whole year and we plan to keep continuing. And also we want to let you know to mark your calendar for Thursday, September 23rd. If you're following us, especially on our social media platforms, you have seen that we actually here on HTL have announced what is called the International Hospitality Women's Day, where we actually are going to be interviewing women in the hospitality world all around the globe in the hospitality field about what is going on in their country. And it's going to start right here this year on Thursday, September 23rd. So for women in the hospitality, times are changing and it's going to be good. So definitely hang tight, mark your calendar for that special day because you will be glad you will join us and hear all that's going on with women around the world. So you probably also want to know what's next. Well, we've got some interesting ladies to interview for next year. We have what is called the Alanisa Meetings and Events Services Collective. And I'm so excited because this is a new startup company that just launched 2 months ago here for the hospitality industry. And we're going to find out why they started this company, especially during uncertain times. And why is it important to consider what is considered a contractor in today's meetings and event space. And I'm talking about independent contractors is what I want to say. And what's the difference between any other type of position in the hospitality industry? And what makes being an independent contractor so appealing in today's meetings and events, and so much more. So don't want to miss next week's episode right here on HTL. I'm Deborah Gardner, and on behalf of our entire staff, thank you for being here. And remember, if you're thinking about it, we're talking about it right here. Have a great week, everybody.